Welcome to today's Explainer. We are diving straight into a massive systemic shift in California canine law that officially took effect on January 1st, 2026. I'm Host A, Senior Counsel at Deep Dive Counseling, and I'm joined by Host B, who is here representing the everyday concerned canine owner trying to navigate these wild new waters. We're also incredibly lucky to have Paul Miller in the studio with us today. Paul is a canine legal expert, a behavioral forensic analyst, and the founder and CEO of Bay Canine. He brings over 33 years of invaluable experience right at the intersection of animal behavior and legal crisis.
Thanks for having me. Honestly, the legal baseline for California's canine industry basically moved overnight, and it is absolutely crucial that we understand exactly how that happened.
For sure. As a dog owner myself, I'm just really eager to understand what this actually means for all of us on the ground.
All right, here is what's on the docket for today. Number 1, the 2026 legal shift. Number 2, debating the broker ban. Number 3, the Doberman dilemma. Number 4, the AI compliance trap. And finally, number 5, building a legal seawall. Let's get right into it.
Section 1. The 2026 legal shift, a new baseline for canine professionals.
Right, so on January 1st, the state updated its expectations, literally overnight. This left businesses that were relying on older inherited contracts suddenly operating completely outside the law without even realizing it.
Let's break down what we're calling the statutory trinity. We have 3 main components here. First is AB 519, which targets traditional brokers and completely dismantles predatory deposit contracts. Then there's AB 506. This one focuses on origin and medical disclosures, and it explicitly voids non-refundable deposits. Finally, SB 312 restructures the whole import chain. It requires a really strict 10-day window for a digital certificate of veterinary inspection, or CVI, right before crossing the border. And listen, missing that window by even 24 hours makes entry non-compliant. There are 0 exceptions for administrative errors.
Okay, so looking at these new laws, how does this actually play out in a standard transaction between a buyer and a seller today?
Well, let's zoom in on the micro detail of AB 506. For decades, breeders and trainers have totally relied on non-refundable deposits, right? But under this new statute, those clauses are now entirely void because they go against public policy. So if money is exchanged under one of these voided clauses, a simple written notice from the buyer triggers a self-executing mandatory 30-day refund. It completely bypasses the need for the buyer to ever step foot in a courtroom or initiate a lawsuit. And to top it off, the animal remains with the buyer. It's a total game changer.
Moving on to Section 2, debating the broker ban, oversight versus the shadow market. Let's take an impartial look at the pretty intense legislative debate surrounding AB 519. So the opposition to this bill was incredibly vocal. Alyssa Miller-Hurley from the Pat Advocacy Network made the argument that banning licensed brokers is basically repeating the failure of the 2019 retail ban. Their main concern is that if you remove these regulated avenues, you're just going to push consumers straight toward an unregulated shadow market. You know, places like Craigslist, Facebook Marketplace, or TikTok, where there's absolutely 0 oversight. Now, on the flip side, the bill's authors presented a very strong counterargument. Their perspective is that, well, the shadow market already exists. They argue that online platforms and pseudo-rescues were already out there concealing where these animals come from. So from their standpoint, the legislative intent of AB 519 is simply to strip these predatory brokers of their false legitimacy and permanently close the loopholes being used by profit-driven pipelines.
And, regardless of which side of that debate you fall on, the reality we have to deal with is the creation of prosecutorial standing. This is severe. We're no longer just talking about private squabbles between a buyer and a seller. The Attorney General, district attorneys, and city attorneys now have the independent authority to enforce these contract provisions on behalf of the general public. Basically, these statutes have taken standard consumer protection laws and turned them into active prosecutorial weapons against non-compliant canine businesses. Section 3. The Doberman dilemma, the insurance liability gap. This is an explainer model we use to illustrate a really destructive interaction between your civil liability and your private homeowner's insurance.
Right, so this is where we see 2 totally independent systems just colliding head-on. On one side, California Civil Code Section 3342 imposes strict liability for dog bites. That means there is no one-bite rule. If your dog bites, you are legally responsible immediately. But on the other side, private insurance carriers routinely assess risk and will legally deny coverage based on a dog's breed alone. So what happens? An owner can be held strictly liable for a massive 6-figure judgment in court while at the exact same time having their claim completely denied by their insurer.
Honestly, as a dog owner, seeing this exposure gap is terrifying.
You just assume that your standard homeowner's policy protects your family dog.
I know, it's a massive gap. And unlike states like New York, Pennsylvania, or Michigan, California currently has no state statute that prohibits insurers from denying, canceling, or jacking up the price of coverage based on dog breed alone.
Even if your dog has literally zero prior history of aggression, the breed alone is a legally permissible basis for denial in this state.
And this brilliantly illustrates just how deep the problem goes, because this gap even affects highly trained service dogs.
Exactly. A handler can do everything right. They can have a legitimate task-trained psychiatric or mobility service dog perfectly compliant with the ADA and still face a claim denial. A German Shepherd serving as a legitimate service dog can still be excluded from a homeowner's policy on breed grounds alone. The dog's service status simply does not override a private insurance breed exclusion under current California law. It really is a staggering vulnerability.
So, with all these statutes changing so incredibly fast, how are businesses even updating their paperwork to keep up? Are they just Googling new templates or what?
Well, that brings us perfectly to Section 4, the AI compliance trap, engineering courtroom catastrophes. Because relying on artificial intelligence right now is creating a massive hidden danger.
We actually call this hazard statutory misrepresentation. When thousands of professionals suddenly faced this compliance gap, what did they do? They turned to large language models. And the documents the AI outputs look flawless. They've got the correct legal formatting, incredibly confident terminology. But here's the catch. General AI models interpolate historical data. They pull outdated precedents and completely miss that exact January 1st, 2026 cutoff. So the AI will confidently spit out a non-refundable deposit clause that the newly passed AB 506 has explicitly rendered void.
To really grasp the sheer scale of this trap, consider a business coach operating out here in California. If that coach uses an AI-generated template containing one of these voided clauses and distributes it to their roster of, say, 200 trainees, they haven't just made a little typo. They have effectively engineered 200 simultaneous, self-executing legal vulnerabilities all across the state. And here is where it gets incredibly dangerous. In a courtroom, an AI-generated legal error isn't just an oops, it is definitive evidence that the business relied on automated shortcuts rather than verified forensic oversight.
Which means trusting unverified AI is essentially handing over a documented confession of noncompliance.
Section 5. Building a legal seawall. The dual audit methodology. So, the big question. How do professionals actually protect themselves in this rapidly shifting legal ocean?
Real protection requires a very specific operational shift. We recommend what's called the dual audit methodology of the ocean of Canine Law. Here's how it works. Step 1, you can use AI, sure, but strictly for formatting and baseline drafting only. Step 2, you take the AI out of the loop and manually verify every single clause against the actual primary California legislative code. Step 3, you get an independent review by a licensed attorney to assess for litigation and civil enforcement risks. You absolutely must replace automated shortcuts with verified forensic oversight.
And for the everyday owner trying to navigate all of this, the practical steps are pretty clear. If an incident happens, you absolutely must notify your insurer promptly and do it in writing. Because of California's strict liability standard, a first-time bite is likely going to be a covered claim that works in the victim's favor, provided, of course, the owner hasn't been caught in one of those breed exclusion traps we talked about earlier.
All right, let's quickly summarize the core takeaways from today's explainer. Both professionals and everyday owners have to actively audit their documentation. You need to completely eradicate non-refundable deposits per AB 506. You must enforce that strict 10-day digital CVI window for imports under SB 312. You really must directly contact your insurer to verify breed exclusions. Please do not just assume you are covered, and above all else, avoid relying on unverified AI templates to shield your liability.
We'll leave you with this final, provocative thought to chew on. As the waves of California law move faster than ever, is your canine contract a true legal shield, or is it just a documented confession of non-compliance?
And just as a final reminder, all the content we discussed today is for educational and informational purposes only. It does not constitute legal advice. You should always consult a licensed California attorney to verify your own specific legal standing in this new landscape.
Absolutely crucial point. Thank you so much, Paul, and thank you, Host B. We will see you all next time.